All right, if you're still with us after, how many videos has this been now?
Yeah, this is in the 40s, and this is like a few months since we filmed the last
Hey
one.
Rob, let's do an intro to jiu-jitsu series for YouTube. It won't take that long. Okay, so we gave you the rear naked choke, which is the first submission you should learn, because as we mentioned earlier, you want to first learn how to control someone's, your own body, then someone else's body, then you learn submission. So the first submission we give you is the rear naked choke, because you've demonstrated control getting onto someone's back. The other main position that demonstrates control is the mount. As we mentioned earlier in the series, you will generally mount someone, I just jammed my hurt finger. You will generally mount someone by gaining a crossface and an underhook that you can use to break their alignment, so that when you mount, you're ending up kind of in this position. So if you've done the proper procedure for mounting, half your job is done, and you will now be able to attack an arm triangle. An arm triangle, we're going to give you the leg triangle, which, you've heard the term triangle choke. You've probably seen, or it's been referred to as the leg triangle, where you get from the bottom of guard and you choke someone with your legs. An arm triangle is the same principle, which is making a triangle with your arm and your partner's arm, creating that same kind of triangle shape that, roughly speaking, all chokes should have. And in this case, we're doing it from the mount, but it's an attack that you can hit from anywhere. It's just we teach it first from the mount because of, again, reinforcing that hierarchy of controlling my body first, controlling their body second, then learning submission. So we want to teach you a submission from the back and then a submission from the mount. Those are the two most controlling positions. You should seek to get to those positions before you worry about doing submissions from anywhere. So once again, we've gained this underhook. We've walked it out as far as we can. We've slid our shin across, and let's just rotate a little bit, and as I flip my foot to the mat, the angle of my shoulder and chest changes so that Rory's elbow is going farther towards the ground, which is then going to allow me to bring my head to the other side of it and secure it. So we can go back this way. So I'm securing this arm as a lever. My goal now is going to be to create as much pressure with my biceps against this side of his neck and as much pressure with his shoulder against this side of his neck. The key thing here being the internal rotation of the shoulder that will cut off the blood flow on this side of the neck. If I don't achieve that, and there are a couple things that will get in my way, then I'm gonna struggle to finish this choke. The first thing that'll get in your way is not knowing to emphasize this, right? Is just kind of putting your head down and squeezing super hard. So open your elbow a little bit here. Really, you can see how Rory's shoulder is nowhere near his neck. So that's the first thing that's gonna get in the way. The next thing that's gonna get in the way is my biceps not being tight enough. So there'll be a procedure for that, I'll give you in a second. And the third thing that's gonna get in your way is going to be your shoulder on top of their jawbone, which is going to act as a frame and prevent you from generating the pressure that you need to actually seal off the blood flow. So the first thing that we're gonna kind of deal with is ear to ear or head to head, whatever heuristic helps you maintain this contact where Rory can't bring his elbow back around and escape the position. So as soon as I transfer, my chest, my head to this side, I go ear to ear or head to head with him. The next thing I'm going to look to do is fix the problem with my biceps. So what I'll be looking to do is frame Rory's head and walk. So like itsy bitsy spider style, walk my biceps, walk my arm all the way this way as far as I can until I feel contact with my biceps tight against Rory's neck. And it's important while I'm doing all this that my muscles be as relaxed as possible. I'm not flexing yet. Now, let's rotate this way. I need to take care of the problem of his shoulder, my shoulder being against Rory's chin. So to do that, I'm gonna back up and lower my shoulder. And as I crawl forward, you can see Rory's tapping already.
I was comfortable there when it was just sitting on my jaw, and then as soon as you dropped in, everything started to get...
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, keeping my arm relaxed is really important here, because what I'm doing is once I gain the position, as long as Rory's elbow doesn't extract, I know I'm gonna choke him. I'm not in a rush. I don't wanna be tense. I don't wanna burn myself out. The looser my arm is, the more as I make these little adjustments, the more space I'm sealing off while my arm is still relaxed. I usually use the analogy of like a hose, right? It's when there's not any water pressure, when it hasn't been turned on, it's pliable and you can kind of wrap it around stuff. And then when you turn the pressure on, right, it becomes engorged with water, and that's what we're going for here. We want loose, relaxed, and then all of a sudden we turn the pressure on by flexing, and then everything seals off really tightly. So, got ourselves to here. This switch here is quite important, right? Like as I get to here, my chest right now is kind of in the way, but if I just try to move my head now, I'm gonna lose him. So here, a little more pressure, there we go. Like take your time and then head to head right away. Press the head as we walk our shoulder over. We're going to windshield wiper our shin to here. This allows us to create a little bit more of an angle. And like some people actually favor keeping the leg here. I'm a little bit agnostic about that, but whatever works for you. Sorry, we're just kidding.
Oh, I'm dying.
Yeah. And then the sinking motion of dropping my shoulder down and back so that I can project forward is so important. What we're trying to do, if I can get you to rotate this way, what we're trying to do is use our collarbone or the top of our sort of trap to drive this arm in. What we're not trying to do is push the elbow across. We're going to talk about these same finishing mechanics when we talk about the leg triangle, particularly from the bottom, where if all we're doing is this, all we're doing is pushing the elbow across, this space here is wide open. There's no pressure from his shoulder going into his neck to cut off the blood flow. So I've got to have my body here pushing that shoulder up into his neck. It's the main thing that I need to do. And you will have noticed, hopefully, that at no point did I connect my hands or grab my biceps yet, and Rory's already starting to go out. It's important when we learn this, and I teach this to my total beginners here at my club. It's important that we learn this without connecting our hands. If we can get the mechanics right during drilling against a non-resisting opponent, if we can get those to go, then when we're actually sparring and we connect our hands and we drive the pressure in, we're gonna be fine. My preference is for gable grip, palm to palm, rather than grabbing the biceps. Some people like that. I'm not gonna say it's wrong. There are different variations on it. As I mentioned, some people like to keep the knee on the body. Some people like to go to like all the way parallel. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that you understand this internal rotation mechanism, that you understand the main problem with the biceps not being tight enough and the chin being in the way, and that you bring your body back so that you can walk back in to maintain the pressure, and then you have that head-to-head position so the elbow doesn't come out. The other details, depending on where you train, what your body type is, who your instructor is, those details will change, but those essential elements that make the choke work are what we're trying to convey.
Yeah, I just wanted, because that was a great point, that was where I was going to jump in, is with the arm configuration when we start to use two arms, because arm throwing was a choke that I hated for many years, because I couldn't make it work without it just being a crank to the back of the neck, because I studied Submission 101 stuff. If you're watching the Impaler video on Submissions 101, stop it right now, because that kind of stuff's not working. The problem that I was having is that I was trying to do that rear naked choke grip, because that was the standard of like how to always do it, and it absolutely works, but as a beginner, what I find ends up happening is it encourages you to pull and adjust the backstop into the neck rather than adjusting the other side.
Pulling across and
exactly. So
creating
Rob,
that lateral
lay
pressure.
down, please. Where Rob and I like using that gable grip or a butterfly wrist grip or even an S grip or one arm. The backstop behind his neck is the forearm that's supposed to stay completely flat along the mat from my elbow to my hand. I want it to stay there, and I want to work my bicep into his neck, and I want to work the shoulder up into his neck. As soon as I start trying to lift this hand up to one, make room to get into my bicep, it'll give him some space to turn here, but as you can see, my wrist starts to adjust, and I'm just pulling up like this. And this is where you'll see people be like, well, I'm tapping to a crank and not a choke, and it can be a legit problem, because if I'm just cranking Rob's neck, and he is willing to eat that, I'm not getting clean choke mechanics. And now, you can absolutely do this, but at a beginner stage, I think it's more important that if you get used to finishing with one arm, we keep our arm that same kind of configuration. We make a connection there with the gable grip. I can still focus on dropping, keeping my forearm tight along the mat, and adjusting that. And then obviously, like when we talk about over-engineering the shit out of chokes, like we talked about with the rear naked choke, absolutely. And depending on your build, if you can even get close to putting your hand on your bicep, some people will be passing out from that. But I found, especially as a lankier individual, the choke mechanics were so much more important because I just have that much more space, and the rear naked choke was not doing it.
I mean, frankly, I was being a little bit polite about all these other versions. Like, obviously we're teaching this version because we think it works. We have to give a shout out to Ryan Hall, if you don't know who that is, because you've ignored all our previous shout outs to Ryan Hall. He put out an instructional quite a while ago, probably 10 years ago, on this that was really game changing for a lot of people, ourselves included. So this version we think is just far superior, but it can work a lot of different ways. So
yeah, and so just on a side tangent to quickly talk about another thing that we really like about the arm triangle is that we're talking about head and shoulder control, which is very robust control. It ties in with some of the previous movements that we've already talked about where it comes to being able to attack the chair sit to finish back takes, but also when you're bailing out a back control because somebody is starting to escape, and we're able to just go from back control right into something like an arm triangle. So just for some food for thought for you guys, if I'm here on the on the strong side, and I have this underhook coming through, and we've landed ourselves in proper base, and I'm losing control up here, you can see how we already have that head and arm control. We slide down. And so all I need to do is obviously adjust to make sure that I can fire my bicep through and turn this into an arm triangle. Now likewise, if I'm going for that arm triangle, because Rob's arm is on the other side of my center line, if he manages to turn away, I have the ability to start looking at moving into a chair sit and going right into back control. So just like how we talked about, the rear naked choke should be like that starting point for you because you have a very strong submission, a choke from a very dominant position with a lot of fail safes in place. This is another one where it's like you're in a really good position with a lot of great options. So if you feel like that arm triangle is failing for you, you're not ever putting yourself at risk.
Yeah, and to that effect, let's just touch on one thing. If you feel somebody's getting out of this is like, if I'm like hitting an arm triangle on Rory, and I'm squeezing, and Rory's starting to turn on his right side, and I'm squeezing, and Rory's starting to do this, and I'm squeezing. Okay, so I'm at that point being kind of an idiot. So when we say you can't, nothing can go wrong, or you can't lose the position, and that's provided you're not being, we use the Homer Simpson with his hands in the vending machines analogy. If you haven't seen that Simpsons episode, please go watch it. I'm sure you can get the clip on YouTube instantly. Don't be Homer Simpson with his hands stuck in the vending machines and the firemen are about to cut his arms off. Right? So we use that all the time in here. We just say, don't be a Homer Simpson. Let go. If something's actually not working anymore, just let go and start going to the back. Let go and go back to side control. You've got such a dominant position. You have to be an idiot and a half to actually let somebody get anywhere out of this. So yeah, let's end on that positive note.